Hi guys, we're going to start a new chapter today. Chapter 3 is about migration, and key issue 1 is where are migrants distributed? And so let's get our PowerPoint open. So the first thing we're going to talk about is mobility. And mobility refers to all types of movement. So this is could just be going to school every day, could be going to the stores you go to, or going to visit relatives. And short-term or repetitive acts of mobility, so the way you go to school every day, these are referred to as circulation. So each time you go to school, or people go to college and then go back home when you go to college in the fall and go back home in the spring, that's circulation. Now, a permanent move, on the other hand, is migration. So emigration, with an E, is migration from a location. So you might emigrate from the United States to, like Abigail is going to emigrate from the United States to Norway. That's a given. We all know this. Immigration is migration to a location. So Abigail is going to immigrate to Norway. She's just going to emigrate from the United States. She's going to immigrate to Norway. It can be really confusing. So place A can have individuals migrating away from it and to it. So she's going to immigrate from place A, the United States, to place B, Norway. And she's going to be an immigrant to place B, Norway. No. Hold on, I got that wrong. She's going to be an immigrant, yes, to Norway from the United States. I confused myself. Okay, so place A is the United States, and B is Norway. She's going from the United States to Norway, and she's an immigrant to, why do they have place A and then to place B when you're always going to place B? I think their diagram is just messed up. Know that an immigrant is a person going from a location, and an immigrant is a person going to a location. Ignore their diagram. Okay, so the difference between the number of immigrants and the number of emigrants is a place's net migration. So the number of people coming in and the difference between the number of people coming in and the number of people leaving is your net migration. Okay, so this guy Ravenstein, which is a great name, this guy Ravenstein says that he has these laws for the distance that migrants typically move. And he says most migrants relocate a short distance and remain within the same country, which makes sense, right? That if people are going to go places, that they're going to try and not go very far. So most people, unlike Abigail, are not going to go all the way to Norway. Most people are going to try and not go too far away. So, for example, I went to college in Lexington, and I've come to Frankfurt. Okay, so by the way, this guy's name is E.G. Ravenstein, and a lot of geographers go by two initials like that. I think it makes them really cool. I think it's like a geography trend. Probably when you become a geographer, you immediately switch to your first two initials. So E.G. Ravenstein, he says most migrants relocate a short distance. They remain within the same country. And long-distance migrants to other countries head for major centers of economic activity. So think about, if you're going to migrate to France, where are you going to go? Paris, right? If you're going to locate to England, where are you going to go? London. So generally, when people think of places that they're going to migrate, like when people are like, gee, I want to come to the United States, they don't immediately say, I want to go to Like, think of a really small town. Like, oh, like when I lived in Danville, we had tons and tons of exchange students there. And I would think, what is it about Danville that makes people go, I really want to come to Danville? Like, so generally people head for major centers of economic activity, and that makes sense. So migration can be divided into two categories. And these two categories, one, international migration. So this is a permanent move when people move from one country to another. So when people decide, hey, I really want to go live in France, or I really want to go live in Russia, and they choose to move from one country to another. And historically, this has been from rural to urban places in search of jobs. So people choose to move because they're searching for a better economic situation based on occupations. Now, the other reason people could have international migration is because it's forced. So we have people who are moving because there's some sort of pressure, there's a search for food, or there's been some sort of violence, and we have a refugee situation. So people who are in danger in their country, because they're going to be killed, for example, in the Holocaust, or the situation in Rwanda, when we have some sort of genocide. So Rwanda, Sudan, in Serbia, any sort of situation where people are in danger, that would be forced international migration. Internal migration is a permanent move within the same country. So this would be interregional, when people are moving for jobs. And then intra-regional would be when people move within the same region. So they move from one part of an urban area to another. So, for example, let's say you live in a city, but you live in like an older part of a city and you want to move to the newer part of the city. Or maybe you want to move to like a different part where there's some different like customs or different restaurants, or it's closer to your job. It's a little, if people want to move, definitely intra-regional is a much less traumatic move. And whereas internal migration can involve long distance moves in a large country. So, for example, it's still internal migration in the United States and Russia and China. It's still internal. You're in the same country, but it's a huge move because those countries are so much larger than a lot of other countries. Okay, so if we look at this map of Mexico, an international migration would be moving. Let's follow the arrows here. Come on, mouse. Oh, helps if I use the mouse on my laptop and not on my desktop. So an international migration would be from like Nuevo León to Los Estados Unidos. Y entonces, from America Central de Chiapas, an interregional migration. We're going to move from a place like Zacatecas to Chihuahua. So we're moving from the central region to the northern region. So we're definitely going to have different climate. We're going to have different economic opportunities. And that's going to drastically change daily life. And then in interregional, so for this move, we're staying in the same country. For this move, we're staying in the same country, but we're going to stay in the same region. So for San Luis Potosí, we're still in the, come on, mouse. Okay, no mouse. We're in the same region, central Kentucky, and then for Mexico City, we're in the same central region. But we might be moving again for different economic opportunities, for different job purpose, for different housing opportunities. It just depends. Maybe there's better schools in Mexico City. Maybe somebody has family in Mexico City and that's why they want to move there. So there are all different reasons for migration. So approximately 9% of the world's people are international migrants. And the global pattern reflects migration tendencies from developing countries to developed countries. So net out migration, so people tend to go out of these places, Asia, Latin America, and Africa. And people tend to come in to North America, Europe, and Oceania. So this shows us those net patterns. So the average annual net migration from 2000 to 2005. So generally, like we said, people are coming in to North America. People are coming in to Oceania. People are coming in to most countries in Europe. And then we have a general out migration in Latin America, Africa, and then Asia. And you can see where, so a lot of people in Asia are going to the United States. We have a lot of people we have some like South Asians going to Oceania, some even South or East Asians going to, oh no, I made that up. Some people in Central America or in Latin America coming to Asia. We have Africans coming to Oceania, Africans going to Europe, Africans going to the United States or going to North America. You can see people from Latin America going to North America and Latin Americans going to Europe. So a lot of migration in all different directions. So the U.S. has more foreign-born residents than any other country, approximately 43 million as of 2010, and it's growing by 1 million people annually. The three main eras of immigration in the U.S., we have colonial settlement in the 17th and 18th centuries, and then we have mass European immigration in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. And we have an Asian and Latin American integration in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Hold on, let's break that down a little bit. So the 17th and 18th centuries, we're going to see about 2 million Europeans migrating to the American colonies. We have the permanent English colonies, beginning with Jamestown in Virginia in 1607. And then we have Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1620. 90% of European immigrants to the United States during this period came from Great Britain. Sub-Saharan Africa, most African Americans descended from Africans forced to migrate to the Western Hemisphere as slaves. During the 18th century, 400,000 Africans were shipped as slaves to the 13 colonies that later became the United States. And these people were shipped primarily by the British. The importation of Africans as slaves was made illegal in 1808, but another 250,000 Africans were brought to the United States during the next half century. And we'll talk more about that in Chapter 7. So that shows you an important differentiation between forced migration and voluntary migration. So most Europeans were voluntary migrants, and most Africans were forced migrants. Then we have the immigration in the 19th and early 20th century. So in the 1840s and 1850s, we're going to have a lot of immigration from Ireland and Germany. So immigration is going to jump from 20,000 to more than 200,000. 3/4 of all U.S. immigrants during those 2 decades come from Ireland and Germany. And Germans are going to immigrate because of political unrest. In the 1870s, again, Ireland and Germany. That's going to resume following a temporary decline during the U.S. Civil War. In the 1880s, we're going to have immigration that increases to 500,000 per year. We're going to have increasing numbers of Scandinavians, especially Swedes and Norwegians. And Because the Industrial Revolution has diffused to Scandinavia, this triggers a rapid population increase. And then from 1905 to 1914, we have immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe, and these numbers reach 1 million. Two-thirds of all immigrants during this period come from Southern and Eastern Europe, especially Italy, Russia, and Austria-Hungary. This coincides with the diffusion of the Industrial Revolution to Southern and Eastern Europe and a huge population growth. So Germany has sent the largest number of immigrants to the U.S. at 7.2 million. Italy has sent 5.4 million. The United Kingdom, 5.3 million. Ireland, 4.8 million. Russia and the former Soviet Union, 4.1 million. And about 1/4 of Americans trace their ancestry to German immigrants, 1/8 each to Irish and English. And it's really hard to determine some of those boundaries. For example, most Polish people immigrated to the U.S. at a time when Poland didn't exist as an independent country. So most of those people were counted as Germans, Russians, or Austrians. So sometimes it's hard to trace your genealogy back. Now, if we look at the late 20th and early 21st centuries, we have people coming from Asia, specifically China, the Philippines, India, and Vietnam. And then nearly 1/2 million people immigrate to the United States annually from Latin America, more than twice as many during the entire 19th century. And people recently head to California, Florida, New York, or Texas. And officially, Mexico passed Germany in 2006 as the country that sent the U.S. the most immigrants. Unofficially, this is unofficial because of the large number of unauthorized immigrants. Mexico probably has the leading source during the 1980s, and during the 1990s, there have been an unusually large number of immigrants from Mexico and other Latin American countries because of the 1986 Immigration Reform and Control Act. So let's take a look at some of these maps. So you can see where people are headed to and where people are coming from. So you can see throughout the years we're going to have a huge surge in people around the time of World War II and right after World War II from Europe. And then that's going to go down. And you're going to see lots and lots of people from Oceania later in the late 1990s into the 2000s, and then people from Africa. So this shows what states people are coming to, and that's it.